Mark Cuban steps into an elevator with a potential investor. 15 seconds to make an impression. Instead of pitching his business idea, he notices the man's unique watch and asks a simple question about it. By the time they reach the top floor, Cuban has a $2 million commitment, not because he talked about his company, but because he mastered what Dale Carnegie called the art of making others feel genuinely important. Most people think good conversation is about being interesting. Carnegie discovered the opposite is true. The secret to never running out of things to say isn't about what you say, it's about what you make others want to say. This changes everything about how we connect with people. Whether you're in a job interview, on a first date, or trying to network at a conference, Carnegie's conversation principles can transform awkward small talk into meaningful connections that people remember long after you've left the room. The question stack method. Carnegie studied thousands of successful conversations and found they all follow the same hidden pattern. He called it the question stack, a psychological technique that creates what researchers now call curiosity loops in the human brain. Here's how it works. Most people ask surface questions. What do you do? Where are you from? These questions get surface answers that lead nowhere. Carnegie taught a different approach. Start with an observation, not a question. Instead of, what do you do? Try, you have the look of someone who's solved some interesting problems. This forces the other person to think about their identity, not just recite facts. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. When someone has to reflect on who they are, rather than just state what they do, their brain releases dopamine, the same chemical associated with pleasure and reward. They literally start to feel good talking to you. Then, stack your follow-up questions based on emotional cues, not logical ones. If someone mentions they're an accountant with a slight smile, don't ask about tax season. Ask what got them excited about numbers in the first place. If they mention travel with a distant look, ask about the place that changed how they see the world. Abraham Lincoln, one of Carnegie's heroes, was famous for this technique. He would ask people not about their work, but about their hometown, their childhood, or their proudest moment. Lincoln understood that people don't connect over facts, they connect over feelings. Research from Harvard Business School confirms Carnegie's insight. People who ask follow-up questions are rated as more likable, more trustworthy, and more memorable than those who simply share information about themselves. The question stack works because it signals genuine interest, something our brains are evolutionarily wired to respond to. Remember, the secret to never running out of things to say isn't about what you say, it's about what you make others want to say. When you master the question stack, conversations flow naturally because you're following the other person's emotional breadcrumbs. The personal story bridge. Carnegie discovered something counterintuitive about human connection. We don't bond over our similarities, we bond over our shared emotions about different experiences. He called this finding the personal story bridge. Every person you meet has what psychologists call identity anchors, the stories and experiences that define how they see themselves. Carnegie taught that the fastest way to connect with anyone is to help them tell you their favorite story about themselves. But here's the key. You can't just ask, "Tell me about yourself." That's too broad and overwhelming. Carnegie used what he called story triggers, specific prompts that unlock the stories people are secretly proud of but rarely get to share. Try these Carnegie-inspired story triggers. What's something you've learned recently that surprised you? What's a problem you've gotten really good at solving? What's something you believed as a kid that turned out to be completely wrong? These questions work because they tap into what researchers call autobiographical pride, the positive emotions we feel when reflecting on our growth and learning. When someone shares these stories, they're not just giving you information, they're sharing a piece of their identity. Theodore Roosevelt, another leader Carnegie studied extensively, was legendary for this skill. Roosevelt could connect with coal miners and kings alike because he understood that everyone, regardless of their status, has stories they're proud of and rarely get to tell. Here's the advanced technique. Once someone shares their story, connect it to a universal human experience, not a personal one. Instead of saying, "That reminds me of when I," say, "That takes real courage," or "That's the kind of problem solving that changes everything." You're validating their experience without shifting focus to yourself. Modern neuroscience shows why this works so powerfully. When we feel heard and understood, our brains release oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. This creates an instant sense of trust and connection that can form in minutes instead of months. The fastest way to connect with anyone is to help them tell you their favorite story about themselves. This principle turns every conversation into an opportunity for genuine human connection. The exit strategy that makes people want more. Most people think the hardest part of conversation is getting started. Carnegie knew better. The most crucial moment in any conversation is how you end it. Get this wrong, and even a great conversation becomes forgettable. Get it right, and people will look forward to seeing you again. Carnegie studied the psychology of memory and discovered what researchers now call the peak end rule. People judge experiences primarily based on how they felt at the most intense moment and how it ended. This means your exit strategy can determine whether someone remembers you fondly or forgets you entirely. Here's Carnegie's counterintuitive approach. Always leave when the conversation is at its peak, not when it starts to fade. Most people stay in conversations until they become awkward or boring. Carnegie taught the opposite. Exit while both people are still engaged and energized. The technique works like this. When you notice the conversation hitting a high point, maybe you've both laughed at something or they've shared something meaningful, that's your cue to start wrapping up. Say something like, "This has been such a great conversation," or "What a fascinating perspective." Then give them something to look forward to. "The next time we talk, I'd love to hear how that project turns out." Benjamin Franklin, who greatly influenced Carnegie's thinking, was famous for this technique. Franklin would often leave social gatherings early, not because he wasn't enjoying himself, but because he understood that people remember the last impression most vividly. The psychology behind this is rooted in what researchers call the recency effect, combined with positive anticipation. By ending on a high note, you become associated with positive feelings. By mentioning a future conversation, you plant a seed of anticipation that keeps you in their thoughts. But here's the crucial part. Your exit must feel natural, not abrupt. Carnegie taught a three-step formula. Acknowledge the value of the conversation, express genuine appreciation for their insights, and create a gentle bridge to future contact. Research from Stanford University shows that conversations ending with positive anticipation create stronger memory formation than those that simply peter out. People literally remember these interactions more clearly and rate them more positively. The most crucial moment in any conversation is how you end it. Master the Carnegie exit strategy, and you'll transform from someone people forget into someone they actively hope to see again. The power to transform any interaction. These Carnegie principles work because they tap into fundamental human psychology that hasn't changed since the 1930s. We all want to feel heard, understood, and valued. When you make that happen in conversation, you're not just talking, you're creating connection. The question stack method ensures you never run out of things to say because you're always following the other person's interests. The personal story bridge turns small talk into meaningful exchange, and the strategic exit leaves people wanting more. Practice these techniques in low-stakes situations first, with cashiers, neighbors, or casual acquaintances. The more you use them, the more natural they become. Soon, you'll find that conversations flow effortlessly, and people will start seeking you out. Carnegie understood that conversation skills aren't just nice to have, they're essential for every area of life. Whether you're building relationships, advancing your career, or simply wanting to feel more confident in social situations, these principles give you the tools to connect authentically with anyone. That's it for now. Appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't already, and see you in the next video.